Hello and welcome everyone. We are here at Industry 4.0 Club, our Thursday live stream on people, process, and culture. And we are here joined by Chris from Vertech, where we're going to talk a little bit about change management. I'm also joined by Ira Sharp and Scott Phillips from our club as well to kind of get the uh, questions and answers going here, and be an interesting conversation. Um, Thanks everyone for joining, and hope that you guys are going to be interested in this topic. And if you have any questions and comments, please feel free to enter them into the chat, either in LinkedIn or YouTube, wherever you are watching this live, of course. We'll start with a quick introduction of all of us, and then have a conversation around this topic, and then we'll bring in questions from the viewers here as appropriate. Um, and again, as we usually, if you like to have these type of conversations as much as we do, please join all our scheduled rooms. We have them typically Monday through Thursday every week uh, at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Central. We are slowly getting back into our normal schedule with meetings or rooms or streams every day. But we've had a kind of period where we're doing every Monday and Wednesday, and then Tuesday and Thursday. But if you have followed our schedule this week, you've seen that we had already a Monday and a Wednesday this week, and now we're doing Thursday. And we're going to slowly start ramping up again to our full schedule. But if you want to see our schedule, you can get it either on our website, www.industry40club.com, or on LinkedIn as well for all the LinkedIn events, and on Clubhouse for the Clubhouse events. Thanks everyone for being here. We love having you guys come back and add to our conversation. I hope and encourage you guys to continue to join us in all these streams that we have here on Industry 4.0. And before I hand it over to our co-host here and our guest, Chris, just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Jan Pingel. I am a co-founder of Industry 4.0 Club. But once I'm not here with these fine gentlemen, normal wise, I work for Ingersoll Rand. I am a product leader for our digital solutions, where we are utilizing IoT to make our equipment smart and connected. On to you, Ira.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Jen, and excited to be here for everyone out there. My name is Ira Sharp, and in my day job, I'm the Director of Marketing for Automation at Phoenix Contact, and that gives me responsibility for PLCs, I/O, process infrastructure, all those types of things throughout the U.S. market. But when I'm not doing that, I'm actually a co-founder here at Industry 4.0 Club, and really enjoy conversations like we're going to have here today. And I'll flip it over to Scott.
Great, thanks, Ira. Scott Phillips here, like Ira and Jan, also a founder of the Industry 4.0 Club. And when I'm not doing things like this, I have a consulting practice where I build Industry 4.0 roadmaps for companies called I4Score. And I had the privilege of learning about Vertech at different industry events. Vertech's one of the best-in-class system integrators, and I'm sure Chris will say more about them. And then had the opportunity to listen to Chris present on some webinars, and really was interested in a topic around change management and how Vertech applies that in their client engagement processes. So with that, I'll turn it over and introduce Chris from Vertech, Chris McLaughlin.
Hey everyone. So yes, I'm Chris from Vertech. I am a SCADA and MES specialist, and Vertech exists to elevate human well-being through automation. What does that actually mean? We are an engineering firm that specializes in automation, SCADA, MES, and industrial IT. And I just gotta say, quick note, the intro music that you guys have is so catchy. Like, I want to put it on my running mix or something. So well done on that. And Jan, you're on mute, but
Yeah, I'm on mute. I was just gonna have you continue do say often.
We are having technical difficulties today. Jan, you're breaking up like crazy. But if you want,
guys hear me?
Half. If you put up the graphic, I can continue the talk if you like.
Yes.
So everybody, they brought me on today to talk about change management, which is a huge topic. And there are so many different ways about this. And so for us, we adopted Cotter's 8. And so you guessed it, Cotter is somebody's last name. His name is actually Dr. John Cotter. And so you know it's got to be good because he's a doctor. And it has 8 steps in it versus another competing one from Lewin, also very popular, has only 3. And the major differences between those two is that the 3-step is focusing just on the change process itself versus this 8-step is very much about the people. And we liked that. It fit in line with what our culture is all about. It's very focused on the people. And so we thought, this is great. And so when we are doing projects or the way that we are running business, we have tried to implement as many of these 8 steps as possible into our practices. So from the very top, in step 1, it's about getting the majority of the people invested in that there's change that is needed. Step 2 focuses on creating a team of the right people to implement that change and sponsor that change. 3 is getting people excited. Why are we doing this? What is the actual vision? And very important, what's the benefit to the people? Not just the company. This isn't just going to affect the bottom line of why should the people actually be excited about this change? And then step 4 is shouting it from the rooftop. You want to communicate this often, clearly, and loudly. And then step 5 is about the company empowering the people so that they can actually implement the change. Followed up by step 6 is keeping them invested, giving them some short-term wins, letting them see that the change is actually having an effect and that it's going to help everybody and the company. Step 7 is about continuous improvement of strategic planning, changing it up, keeping it fresh, making sure that everybody knows where this is going and what the roadmap is. And then lastly, step 8 is indoctrination or training or whatever you want to call it, but for both the current employee and the ones that are joining the organization, making sure that they understand what this is, how it works, what their role and responsibility is within it, and making sure that they have that education. And so, as you can see, us as a systems integrator, we can't do all of these just ourselves. We can educate, we can encourage, but there are some definite steps within here that it's going to take the end customer being responsible for doing those steps.
Hey, Chris, this is Scott. Can you say a little bit more about that? You know, of the 8 steps, what is the role of you as the service provider versus the end user you're working with?
Yep. So there's probably about half of these that we have a strong place in it. So in number 1, that we can be a part of that. Why is change needed? A lot of times it's something that we have shown off or that we're talking with the company to be able to show off of why change is needed. Step 2, we are very involved in of helping choose that project team, not only during the project, but post-project to be able to own the solution. They might call on us a little bit for the vision setting, but that's normally an internal thing. And the communication, again, we can educate, but it normally has to be them. Step 5 is very specifically on them of empowering their people. Step 6 is us, though. This is getting some quick wins, getting some early pilot projects, showing off a valuable solution to be able to encourage everybody. We do participate in step 7 as the strategic planning and continuous improvement. And then we also participate very heavily in the training aspects for current employees and future people coming in.
I'm going to just keep going here, Chris, because I'm just fascinated by this topic. What's, I guess, with those steps where there's a major role that has to be played by the client, the end user, what's your general experience with their receptivity, or I guess ability to step up and take it versus resistance, and what happens when they don't want to play their roles?
Yep. So part of the reason why this came about in the first place is there was one particular project where we loved the solution. We thought that it was a great project for the customer. They were very excited about it too. And we watched it go from everybody being involved, multiple disciplines within a company, all a part of it. And it got to the point where it was implemented and, everybody celebrates, we're done, have a party. And they went back to their day jobs, all within the different facilities and corporate and whatnot. And that project is just sitting there, and it's going to implement change. And they're going to use these analytics and these performance stats to be able to make their business better. But there was nobody that owned it. There was no future of it. And I am sad to say this, but within like a year to 2 years, it fell into basically nothingness. There just wasn't anybody using it because nobody was owning it. And that made us so sad that you put out this world-class solution, and that doesn't even guarantee that the change is going to really stick. And so this became very important to us. And so step 2, picking that right team and then having them continue on. And step 7 and 8, if you can't get strategic planning and you can't get the right training to carry on, it's almost like we have to tell these horror stories to be like, you have to do these things, or else all this money that you're investing isn't going to go anywhere.
So I'd like to follow up on that a little bit. In those cases where there was no ownership, you said, right? I'm assuming that's also because it might have been not obvious for everybody the value of that change or the new reports or whatever, what they were bringing. And so is this really also a fault on the communication side that everybody was not really on board, even though they kind of seemed to be rah, whatever, but at the end of the day, once you get back to normal scenario, they just didn't really see the bigger picture there or something like that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you.
Okay, yeah.
There's a moment of different levels, right? Everybody has their role. So starting from an operator level of there's a need to use the system and put in good data. And everything is very focused on the minute, the hour, the shift. And so encouraging them that what you're doing has an effect on not only your job, it's going to improve your job if things are going wrong, if your machine is constantly breaking down, and you have a voice basically to leadership of things that you need to change by helping put in this information. And then the next up at a management level of shift and the day and the week of there is knowing what is important to them so that they can understand that we need to keep entering data, we need to look at the data, and we need to make sure that everybody is understanding why we're using this system. And then up at a plant level and even up to corporate on a week, month, quarter type of time frame, actually doing continuous improvement from what is occurring. Because the easiest way to kill this from the bottom is if you're telling them that this is going to affect change, this is going to affect continuous improvement, and they're all gung-ho about putting everything in and nothing is done with the data, it's fake. We're not going to continue to use this system. We don't care. We're going to just keep on doing our job in the easiest way possible because you're not using the data to actually improve my job.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we talk a lot on implementing Industry 4.0, that if the the main resources on the plant floor don't see where the change that they are doing impacts the overall business revenue, if they can't see it, then it's very hard for them to kind of own it, right? And so if you can make sure that the change is visible in some way, and talk a little bit about sometimes you don't either by gamification or competition, right? If you can show how one shift is improving versus another shift, right? You can kind of drive some of that uh, uh, what do you call it, implementation or uh, um, implementation of that from the different teams to see that actually doing it, because they're now kind of seeing that they're not doing it, they're getting behind, other teams are getting ahead or something like that. So what kind of methods do you at least work with your customers trying to employ to get that visibility of the change in place?
Yeah, so obviously it depends on the type of project. So if it is a performance tracking project, then it is very much about we are trying to improve our efficiency, we're trying to reduce our scrap, we're trying to be better at what we do. We're trying to make sure that these machines run smoother, that your job is easier, and here's the benefit to everyone. And so communicating that out of that this is not just and this was another problem that we've had a long time ago that also spurred this on. We've had it before where one senior engineer or one plant manager comes to us and they're like, yeah, I speak for everybody. Okay. And so you go through an entire project and it gets released, and the operators think that it's dumb, and the leads don't want to use it because they weren't involved in it at all. And so part of the messaging is getting different groups of people involved very early. So we do initial design workshops, and we'll have operators in there. We'll have shift leads in there, all the way up to engineering, IT, executive representation. And so it's about, again, you need that majority of the people, you need your stakeholders, but you need to have enough messaging to the masses that they see this journey, they know why it's being done and what the vision is of what are you going to do with it. Is it just a software system, or is there a point to why we are doing this?
Hey, Chris. So it's a really good, I think, overview there. A question I have is, when you're forming this team, right, to really kind of pull this together of whatever this change will be, is that something that you feel that the people that you work with, it typically comes like natural, or is it something you really got to twist their arm to get these different stakeholders together? I mean, in the case that you just mentioned, the gentleman said he spoke for the larger group, so I have to imagine it can be challenging in some cases. But what is your barometer on that? Is it people pretty accepting of that, or is it nah? You gotta twist some arms to get some things done.
I would say that it's not natural. Um, so some people actually, a lot of people will come in with a group, like a steering committee, that they have decided they were going to embark on this project. They got the funding for this project. And so they think that that is the entire team. A lot of times that's just comprised of corporate or very specific groups. And these projects are too multidisciplinary to have that limited of a group speaking for everybody and come out with the right solution. And so it's an immediate encouragement of, at the simplest level, you say there's a project lead, there's engineering, there's IT, there's executives. Okay, that's one way of saying it. But I think that there's 4 things that you have to have on the team, and this is really how we're trying to communicate it, is there has to be somebody that understands how the process works. You also need somebody that understands how the process makes money, somebody who understands how to make the process more efficient, and then somebody that can affect change on the equipment and on a human level. And if you can build that team, then you will be successful.
Hey, Chris, I'm curious, of those four, which one is most often left out or missed?
So the continuous improvement aspect of it tends to get forgotten. And so that's the being able to affect change. And so it's very focused on, it's a goal of, we are making a system, we are making an industry 4.0 solution, and everything is dumped into that without understanding that that's not the finish line. That is practically the starting line at that point. And then it becomes real. Somebody has to own this after it is implemented. Somebody has to maintain this. Somebody has to use the data for actual continuous improvement purposes. And somebody, engineers need to be responsible too for what changes need to be made to the machine because the data said it. What changes need to be made to the process because the system and the people said it.
Yeah, that makes sense. You just to back up a little bit, Chris, you're talking about messaging. Somebody's got to keep the message, keep on message throughout the project. Why we're doing this and so forth. Is that normally a very senior executive or a plant manager or supervisor? Who should be doing that? And I mean, or is it different by project or?
It's probably different by project and different by layout of if it's a company with multiple sites and a large corporate representation, or if this is a single site type of setup. And so somebody that is passionate, I tend to say that whoever is the project lead is a very good representative to do that communication. So it doesn't make sense to just have some C-level person, and you're probably not going to get the C-level person to do that. So I'll give two examples. We work with a customer where from the very, very top, that CEO is communicating to Wall Street and to all their investors and at every internal meeting that automation is extremely important and that they are going to be a company that is focused on this and they are going to change the workforce through automation. And that is money. Didn't even have to do with a specific project, but they say it. And then everybody that's involved in projects, those project owners, are communicating that to the people on the plant floor, the people on the sites, the people in IT. They're voicing that. And so they have this dual level messaging that is occurring of, it's important at a company and it's important on this project. That, I think, is the ultimate. If it's a single site and it's going to be your leader or your project leader that needs to be just vocal about this, that has relationship and charisma with all the people that are involved as stakeholders.
So Chris, you have kind of SCADA and MES on your title here, so I'm going to kind of look at those things. If I look at Industry 4.0 and implementation from a change management perspective, a lot of those, at least small steps you can take, is trying to connect a device on asset, trying to get data, visualize the data, get it somewhere so people can see it. So when you have I'm going to pull it back here quick. Step 8, create short-term wins, right? That makes a lot of sense to me. When we talk about MES though, that is typically kind of like a more broad, like a lot of changes at the same time. How do you kind of handle that? Because I'm assuming that would involve a lot of people suddenly having a whole new process, a whole new way of kind of documenting how you're doing or get your work instruction in front of you, et cetera. So how do you make those small wins there?
Sure. Okay, so let's use a couple. If you're, again, yes, you could be a full-fledged MES project that is doing everything from order execution, scheduling, batching, all the way out to the nth degree. And then, yes, a lot of that is coming as a group. And so, yeah, you can't fight that in kind of the same way. You can't break it up. But if there are aspects of MES jobs, so let's say it's more OEE, performance tracking, because that is probably one of the most common MES jobs that you do out there. So instead of biting off everything and trying to do every critical line in the entire facility, what if you just did a pilot? That is one area, that is a small collection of priority lines, and get a quicker win. Start showing some value off from that so that actually is noticeable by people. Or take something that is really annoying in people's ways. So we did this with Four Roses Bourbon, that they had a whole collection of paper clipboards and Excel sheets and manual everything. And so it was a big deal that you could get rid of something that was hard to keep up. And so anytime that you can get a quicker win, that wasn't the entire project, it was just a portion of it. But if you could get something out of the way quickly that people can visibly see and appreciate, that's what we're going for.
Yeah, OE is a great example of if you have the right tool set to be able to implement something that can be easily seen as a great improvement. I remember when I was at Rockwell, we had one guy. He would come in to a customer in the morning, start setting up his system, collecting data. They would go to lunch from 1 to 2 or something, or 12 to 2 or something like that. When he came back, here was a dashboard with OE information from that particular piece of equipment he's connected to. So that makes a lot of sense. You can make some really great impact on where there is no information, there is no good process to really provide that. And OE is a good example for that, for sure. I like that example.
Jan, what was that guy's name? Do you remember?
Yeah, what the heck was his name? I'm sure he's still there. I'll get back to you.
So my one story of, there was somebody at Rockwell, and this is, gosh, like probably 10, 15 years ago plus, but he was like a legend of, it was always talked about like how he would set up demos and like go in and they would just immediately buy all of the software. But we could never seem to like talk with him or even find out his name for like years. He was just like a ghost. And then at one point I actually met him, and I've forgotten his name since, but it sounds like the same guy. Like he would go in the morning and by afternoon, he's already showing you positive impact.
Yep, exactly. I not right now, it escapes me, but I'll definitely get back to you.
Still a ghost.
But a good example of exactly that, right? And there was, without any, I don't think there was any, like in this case here, you have a lot of different planning and communication, right? You basically say, I'll do a pilot and show you the value in one day. And that's what he did.
Hey Chris, I have a question, but before I do, just a reminder to invite anybody listening in to post a question if they have a question for Chris, and he can take it. Chris, my question is, Vertech obviously put a lot of thought and effort into this framework and this. Do you have a sense for how many other system integrators? I mean, you guys are one of the most complex business models out there as far as, system integrator. And do you guys view yourself as kind of best in class, or are there a lot of system integrators that have some framework or think about this? What's the lay of the land?
I think that some of these things are intuitive. And so some of these steps are going to come out no matter what. One of the differences is that we've been on this journey of every time that we're seeing something that causes a project to be not ideal, or that we wish that the outcome would have been different, that we're throwing it in as part of our continuous improvement process for ourselves. And so some of those are just things that we communicate to clients on future projects. And some of those are actual changes that we make to the way that we do project management. But I would say that there's a lot even if you don't know that these are the 8 things, some of these are just going to come out anyways. This formalizes it into a, why is this so important? Why do we do this holistic approach to all of it? And so I don't know. I can't speak to the masses of the integrators, but I bet you there is some inherent, even if it's not explicitly doing all 8.
Do you guys emphasize it because of your leadership? Do you perceive that it leads to better performance for Vertech, or repeat projects, or better goodwill with current customers? Why is it such an emphasis in your culture?
All of the above. So yes, we want projects to go well, obviously, and so it does a few things. Of yes, it keeps the momentum. It takes away you get to the 90% or startup, and people are being like, "What is this? I've never seen this thing before. Why are we even doing this?" And wanting to change the whole project, which is not profitable to us or to the customer. You want repeat referrals, but at a base level, we want them to succeed. We want them to have a system that is actually valuable, actually having an ROI on it, from a moral standpoint, from a business standpoint, all of it.
So Chris, here, before we just continue with more quick, oh, yeah, I was just going to quickly do a little quick reset here if you are joining in a little bit late. This is Industry 4.0 Club, and we are joined here today on our Thursday live stream viewing on the People, Process, and Culture by Chris from Vertech, talking about change management, and especially how Vertech is utilizing Carter's 8 process to implement change management with their customers, and having some great conversation here. And again, as Scott mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat, and we can bring them into this conversation as well. So Chris, I'll be interested in a typical process from a integrator or solution provider is to provide a quote, and then they get accepted, and then they come in and start all their work. But in this case here, I could kind of assume at least that you don't start the work right away. You want to get involved in trying to bring that communication around, and get people involved, and kind of set up the stage more with not just the decision makers on deciding that you can do this project, but the entire team as well. How do you get involved in that, and how kind of get, we need to do this first?
Yeah.
Does that
So
make sense?
there's a part of identifying how far along the path that the customer is. So if they're coming in with an 80-page RFP, and they have a large team that is involved in it, and they've been thinking this project out for a long time, we know you're probably in a better spot than somebody that calls up and is like, "Hey, I heard about this Industry 4.0 thing, and we need it." And you're like, "You've got a little bit more that we need to figure out before we can actually just quote you something." And so we will slow the roll on those projects and do something that we equate to an engineering study. And so normally this is, it's another 8-step process. I think we just like the number 8 for some reason. But it is us coming in and basically looking at what is going to have the most benefit. What is your current situation? What are the things that are limiting you from either people or process or time or dollars? What is the proposed solution? How should that be broken up into phases or scopes of work? And then how do we present that into one cohesive plan? And then at that point, there's enough documentation, and we talk about team building, and we talk about why you're doing this, and we're talking to multiple different representations from the customer, both at a corporate and a plant level. And we've already started down the path of laying the groundwork and the foundation for a healthy project. And then even within the project, we don't get a PO and start typing out code on week one, there's so many processes. We have a very specific 5-step process. It's called the 5D process. That is, we do the define, design before we ever start to develop. And so in that, we use those moments of setting the stage once again. So sometimes, again, that client was very prepared. Sometimes we went through an engineering study. If not, we're at least going to, during the define and design portion of this, get all the right people involved, start educating them on how you need to be messaging this and communicating it, do a what to expect during the lifespan of that project, and start down a healthy path before we are ever starting to work within software.
So, listening to all these different processes and, how you get started in one of these projects and really the communication aspects of it. I mean, it's seems like the linchpin in all of this is this communications piece. And a lot of it really seems like it stems from a vision, right? So even the guy that called you up and says, hey, that industry 4.0 thing, yeah, we need that because they got it. That's scary because that's just a concept, right? So there's got to be a vision, and that's kind of what part of your process was. It was one of the 8-step processes in the vision and kind of how it all comes through. So with that, because it's so important, obviously everybody needs to know about it. How is that communicated, and ultimately who should be responsible for communicating that message?
Yeah. So maybe to answer this in a couple ways, from our side, there is normally a duo of a solutions architect and a project manager. Sometimes you would still have like an account manager that is involved, depending on how early in the stages that is. And they're the ones that are communicating of why do you do this? How do you have a successful project? What is healthy? From their side, I think it goes back to that project owner, as well as a leadership component that needs to be making these communication paths. So a lot of times we're meeting with that collection of project leadership and executive team. At some point, again, like you said, really early on, somebody came to us. It's probably a senior engineer or a senior IT person. But we're going to really quickly establish that it's not just one person that can deal with us. We want to deal with a group of people. This is the right group of people. And we start getting into, okay, this is how we need to communicate out to the rest of the folks within your organization if you want to have a good project.
So we have a viewer, one of our co-founders, Mike Unger, has a question for you. I just put in here. Are you familiar with the Gleisner's formula for change? Change occurs when D, dissatisfaction times vision times first steps is more than the resistance to change.
I wish I was. I am not. So, yeah. I'm sorry. I don't have too much to comment on it.
No,
but I understand it's addressing a
I've
lot
seen
of
it before, right? It does make sense when you look at it, right? There'll be some dissatisfaction that you need to improve, right? There might be what's the vision, right? And how big is that first step? And if that is bigger than the resistance to change, then you'll be able to get some change. Whereas if it's less than, then it could be a problem, right?
Yes. And you can force people to adopt change, or you can educate them on why change is necessary and get buy-in.
Right.
And those are two completely different mentalities of, do you own your work? Do you own the responsibility for what you're doing? And are you educated in such a way as to why the change is necessary? Or are you just forcing somebody saying that, like, if you want to keep your job, this is what you'll do? And two completely different paths And that has to come from the end customer and their people, of the way that the culture that they spread.
Yeah, and probably even sometimes when you do force it, you'll see people just kind of still being, doing it the old way whenever they can, or disrupting, putting a cog in the wheel sometime or whatever.
Oh yeah.
If they're not on board, if they don't, accept it, that is really the in my mind the key part here. You got to get the vision needs to be able to be communicated all the way down so they can see the value, and also they can see that if they do this, this is how their change or their action is going to impact the overall picture, right?
Hey, Chris, question for you. I don't know if Vertech does projects in a union environment. If you're dealing with a union environment, how does that change your approach, if at all?
There aren't so many times where we have had a union environment, so I'm probably not the best to speak towards that. I know that there have been a couple instances, but not enough where I have a distinct opinion on how it would change the communication path.
And just a little extension of that question, the big brother element of a line worker or a frontline operator, right? The first time we've connected some machinery and thrown up a dashboard of some kind, and is whether it's union or not union, how often is that a perception of the frontline workers during a project?
Oh yeah, a huge perception, and without communication, well, that's the first thing that you're going to think of. They just want to know, they want to spy on me, they want a reason to be able to reprimand me. But that's a lack of communication of both vision and purpose. So the way that you could communicate to those people is, remember that this is your voice. This is the way that you tell your manager and leadership that your machine sucks. It's 20 years old, it's 30 years old, and it needs to be replaced, or it needs to be maintained better. This is the way that you show that you are killing it and you are so much more efficient than the rest of the people on B shift. And it can be their voice if communicated properly, and it can be the way of them being able to know what is happening in my environment and my area, what is happening with my people, what is happening with my shift. And it can be a very positive as to why we have this, how it's affecting you as a person. But if you don't communicate, you don't get any of that benefit.
Well, and the reason I ask that is as I watch new technologies coming online, and I don't know if Vertech works with tools like Drishti and video analysis tools, but the degree of monitoring, right, from just imaging and but a lot of these video analysis are actually looking at kind of standard work from a real-time video standpoint, and so the degree of observation is growing in terms of technology. Now the benefits, are everything from cycle time advances to safety and ergonomics and things like that. But it just seems like the degree of espionage is going to be increasing.
It is. And I agree with you of it's everywhere. It's in our personal lives. It's in our work lives. And still, it's data. And when that data is not used in an actionable way, it's still meaningless. You can get tons of videos showing them doing right or wrong actions. And if nobody follows up on it and nobody changes processes because of it, or nobody fixes what the problem is, all that data was meaningless.
Yeah, it's what when you really look at a lot of things, I don't know if you would agree with this, Chris, but I think of those types of systems, and I think this is really how you can define like IoT versus Industry 4.0, and then even going into digital transformation, where IoT is great, but it's really about modifying a machine system or process so that it can do things to become better, and it produces data, but then that data needs to become information, which can ultimately result in actions. And that's really the Industry 4.0 aspect, where you're taking data, raw information, you're making it information so it can be used in some way, shape, or form to improve systems and processes and be visualized in a different way. And then even going a step further and using that information in a grander scope to truly transform an organization, so you can go from clipboard rounds to, you know, actually in Excel spreadsheets, to having systems and dashboards that truly transform the way you work as an organization, is really the big steps.
Yes, and 100% agree. It's the crux of it. That's what we're doing in the vast majority of our projects. It has definitely spanned up from 15 years ago. We were making a lot of automated lines, automated processes with HMIs or basic SCADAs as a part of them, to these days, everything is focusing around actionable information and analytics and notifications and ways of actually changing processes, not just automating from the beginning, but true change within a process, a plant, an organization.
So, Chris, I'm just going to pull back here again. One of the things that is critical here, as we kind of talked about this too, is that the operator involvement and an operator understanding of their impact. Your step 5 is empower employees to implement the change. So when you go in as a integrator and implement an OE solution or MES solution, how do you get the operator part of that cycle? And I would assume that you go in, do a project, and leave, and so you got to have some system in place that will allow those operators to continue making those changes or request those changes and have those changes being implemented. How do you do that?
Yes, and this is complex. This is one of the drawbacks of being an integrator. Is it's too common that the whole goal is getting a system in place, and then normally our funds are gone and it's like, hey, we have our solution now, and you wait for the next project. A lot of times we stay on as support, so technical support, additional training, minor changes and improvements moving forward. So I'll talk to a couple things directly to answer your question. This has a lot to do with the way that the business itself works. So the end customer, there is a mentorship, there is a training, there's a train the trainer, there is the way that continuous improvement works within that organization, and there's a whole culture around that. And we can educate and encourage, but it's a lot of times outside of our direct control just because of the relationship of integrator to end customer. So sadly, that's the answer to your first question. One way that I have seen that has been very powerful, and you'd think that everybody would take us up on this, but it is amazing how few the percentage is. And I'm hoping that there comes a time where more people see the value in this. So we had a system that went in and it completely modernized the way that a facility worked. It was a greenfield facility, and it took it of where everything was automated, everything talked, everything had basically performance metrics. You were doing full order execution and tracking. Awesome. And so we're like, hey, we're going to come back and we're going to baseline assess you of how you are doing your operations. And then at the end of the first quarter, we're going to use the data that you have amassed over the 3 months, and we're going to do a Kaizen event. We're going to figure out what we're going to be attacking prior to coming. We're going to get the right group of people on site. We're going to take what we learned in that event and create a KPI around it to show that not only was it fixed, but here is the difference that it was making. And then we're going to continue tracking that. And at the end of Q2, we're going to come back again, another event, another thing fixed off of the data, track it within it. Same in Q3. And then at the end of the year, we're going to compare your baseline performance and metrics to what it is at 1 year. And super cheap. I mean, I'm talking like this was like 45 grand for the entire process and all of these events. And we get maybe 1 in 10 people that actually take us up on that, which shocks me still that more people wouldn't want to utilize that kind of a performance improvement process.
Why is that, Chris? Why do you think that rate is so low?
So we have debated this so many times. There are friends of mine that we've sat around just talking it out. And we have theories. I don't know the real reason. We think that a large part of it is the company having a person that owns the improvement and owns the solution, rather just them having a system within their company that they happen to be a user of, so that there isn't a true owner that wants to get the value out of the system. They just have a bunch of people that happen to be using the system.
I wonder if another aspect of it is that there's downside, right? Even if I am the owner and the project sponsor, there's only bad news, right? If we're not hitting the ROI, then I'm going to be guilty.
And there's some of that. There's some of, the more that you look into the numbers, the more that it could point out the performance problems over the year. But that was why it was framed in a very positive connotation.
Yeah.
Of the people that we do it for. It's, we're going to solve an actual issue on the plant floor with us and your people, guided by us, to be able to make something better. And so it's not just you didn't hit your stats. Look at this report. It's what can we make better and help drive your actual ROI, rather than just hoping that your ROI comes about organically.
Yeah, we almost need an ISO for Industry 4.0, like we do with energy management, like ISO 50001, where that is the process, right? You do a baseline, you make improvements, and after the first year, you measure those improvements against your baseline, and you do that year over year over year over year if you're part of that entire process. But I don't know exactly what an ISO for Industry 4.0 would look like, but it'd be interesting. Hey, Chris, we got about 5 minutes left. This has been a great conversation. I have really enjoyed understanding a little bit of the process here, and I learned a new process. Very interesting. It's not that it's like mind blowing, but it's just as soon as you put something in a process and you do it, you're actually getting those benefits from it, right? As opposed to just saying, yeah, I know the process, but we can just quickly do this, like whatever. Right? It's always good to have a framework to do something, and this actually takes care of some of the things that you would typically see when you go out and talk to a manufacturer trying to make an improvement. It takes care of the people part, the change part, and the process part. So this has been very great. I will definitely like to see if you have a last comment, last thoughts that you want to bring to your to the viewer here, and then I'll also ask you where people can find you online if they have questions as well.
Sure. No amazing, mind-blowing last thoughts. I just want to thank the Industry 4.0 Club. This is fun. You can tell, like, I get a little passionate about talking about these subjects. I actually like them.
That's
so I appreciate being here with you guys. And you can find us at vertech.com, and there's, you can contact us, type of a form. My email is cmclaughlin@vertech.com. And otherwise, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'll talk with anybody about any of these topics because, we're all about it.
Thanks. Any last comments from you, Scott? You're the one that brought Chris to our audience here, and you're the one that listened to Chris on one of those webinars, and really thought this was a very interesting topic, which I fully agree with.
Yeah, no, it just confirms my reason I'm part of the Chris fan club here. But it's like you said, Jan. It's whenever I consult with companies, they know people and change management is critical, but they don't really have a framework. It's like it's just a nebulous topic. So I think it is really good to see the approach and the structure to it. And boy, a lot of more companies could benefit from it.
For sure. And Ira, I don't want to leave you out.
Well, if I have to look at what my takeaway is from this session, it's Chris is awesome. He definitely likes his material, and it's not just a thing, it's what he's doing. And then in addition to that, looking at the whole bigger scale of things, and it really boils down to, I think, things like communication and how important this is, and then cycling this through. But it's great to have these kind of discussions and look at these different types of processes and everything else. So, yeah, I appreciate your time, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. And I only second that communication and involvement. That's the key parts here. If you can get that going with everybody from the top floor to the bottom to the plant floor, you will have a potential for success there. Absolutely. Again, Chris, great having you here. It's been a pleasure. A lot of good information and a perspective. And I've enjoyed this conversation. I just want to hear before we close out. Again, thanks everyone for joining. And again, you can also watch this offline, of course, after this, both on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Again, this was Industry 4.0 Club. This was our Thursday live stream on our people, process, and culture theme on Industry 4.0. If you like having these type of conversations as much as we do, please join our scheduled rooms. We have them every day, Monday through Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Central, Monday through Thursday, with various topics around Industry 4.0. And you can find our schedule on www.industry40club.com and on LinkedIn and on Clubhouse when we have Clubhouse as well. So thanks everyone joining us today. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Ira. And we will close our session here today. Thank you very much, everyone.